The fitness space moves with trend, and it moves pretty rapidly. So it's driven by, the young demographics, the Gen Ys, Gen Zs, and if we're not up to date with those trends and innovating rapidly, then we get left behind.
This week's guest has spent over 15 years forging growth within the fitness industry and has founded multiple companies of his own. Today, as the CEO of Lift Brands, he oversees a portfolio of 5 operations: Snap Fitness, 9 Round Boxing, YogaFit, Steele Fitness and FitnessOnDemand. Please enjoy this week's episode of the Escape Your Limits podcast. So Ty Menzies, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast in this very unusual time in the world. How's things out? You're in Australia at the moment, is that correct?
No, actually, I have made it over here to Minneapolis. So
Right.
I made it here about 4 weeks ago now, and that was in itself was a significant journey. Probably harder to get out of Australia in the first instance than it was to get into the US, to be honest. But with our border control at the moment in Australia, it was a bit of a challenge.
Right. Okay. So that's a new position now that you're back to head up? Is that correct?
It is, yes. So for the last 5 odd years, I've been heading up the Asia Pacific region of Lift Brands as the Asia Pacific CEO. And as of the 1st of June this year, I took over as the global CEO. So we'll be moving my life over here to Minneapolis and assuming the seat here. Obviously, it's been a challenging time to step in sort of midst of COVID. And the reality is, you don't step in on the 1st of June. There was already quite a bit happening behind the scenes and quite a bit of involvement with triaging and working our way through the COVID situation for the organisation as well. So it's been a baptism of fire, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like just moving into a role like that in normal circumstances is pretty tough. But with everything else that's going on, how did you plan for that? I guess strategically, did you have some key things as a business leader that you said, look, this is what I need to get right? Because there's no playbook in this situation. Normally when you start a new role, there's a bit of a kind of induction. You go through this stuff, but with everything that's going on, I guess nobody can really help on that front. What did you do?
I think the most key piece to the puzzle is lots of conversations with lots of people. Take on feedback, listen to advice, think through things pragmatically. Don't make decisions too rapidly, but obviously you need to move quickly. You can't dwell on things for too long. I think we all saw that at one point there, things were changing almost hourly, if not daily. So it was certainly challenging. So, certainly plenty of conversations and just thinking through things pragmatically. Look, you certainly create a plan. Unfortunately, the plan probably went out the window 5 or 6 times and was rewritten and changed along the journey. But the conversations you have with people and the team on a regular basis is really the only way to move forward, because then you can make things happen quite regularly. So, as we sort of came into COVID and I was sort of ramping up to come into the global role, I was sort of leading our response to the COVID situation globally. And hence, we had a daily global call, which was challenging to get all time zones together for that. That obviously, as we progressed through COVID and kind of found our feet in terms of that cadence of the communication to our franchisees and our partners, that sort of reduced to every second day. And we're now down to a weekly cadence of that call. So we've certainly moved out of the, I suppose, crisis management into the triage mode. And we're now really back to thinking about our strategy moving forward.
So coming from the Asia Pacific region and to the US, what would you say are some of the big differences in terms of what's happening in the business world today?
Yeah, look, we have probably, it's 3 clear regions for us currently. North America, EMEA, so UK, Europe, Africa's, and then APAC. And each region is slightly different at the moment. EMEA for us is by far our newest region. We've been franchising across the UK and Europe for sort of the last 6 to 7 years, about the last 7 years. In APAC, we started in Australia around 11 odd years ago with Snap Fitness. And in the Americas, in the US, we were founded back in 2003. So about 17 odd years, 18 years we've been going. And so the businesses are at different positions, I suppose, in their life cycle and requiring different items in terms of the strategy. So, step one for me was really to understand exactly where the businesses are at, what the businesses require. And again, it really came back to a lot of conversations. So, the first week or two of my stepping in was really about scheduling calls with our franchise advisory councils in each region, and then probably some of our larger and more key franchisees to take on some significant feedback. And what we've really found in each of those regions is, the US and Canada for us being an older business, we're probably needing to pivot just that little bit more than we are in some of our other regions that have adopted some of the, I suppose, the newer direction that fitness is going towards. I think for the first time we're seeing, the driver of people wanting to get involved in health and fitness not being weight loss, strength and conditioning and general health and well-being are now the key drivers. And so, our stores in the APAC and the EMEA regions probably speak to that a little bit more functional training spaces and more strength training equipment than cardiovascular equipment, whereas, in the US, we're a little bit differently positioned. So there's a little bit of pivoting that needs to happen more so in the US and Canada versus some of our other regions. But the reality for us, I guess, that's the bricks and mortar piece. What we can, and that will take a little bit more time to amend and change. What we are working on more significantly is the member experience. And the member experience is something that we can enact change on really rapidly. And in franchising, we kind of look at, well, how do I standardize something that is very different in one region versus another region? So that's been probably our major priority, to have a look at what can we standardize, what needs to be brought back to the real, I guess, purpose of what Snap Fitness is to our members. And that's really come back to the member experience. So we're doing a lot of work with our internal group of franchisees, a global group from a brand strategy and positioning piece at the moment, and working through that brand member experience piece, supported and mostly supported by technology more than anything else. So quite a bit of work happening in that space at the moment.
And how are you dealing with all the different changes? So for example, over the last 2 weeks, I've been in 4 different states, and every state that I've been into, some gyms are open, some are not. Some gyms require face masks, some don't. So even just within, I'm traveling around the West Coast of the United States, the business owners are having really different challenges to deal with. And my workout experience, in some of the gyms, they're extremely strict about face masks, which is fine. But the experience of working out in that type of environment where you've got to be covered up isn't a particularly nice one. And whereas other places are being a little bit more sort of relaxed. So how are you dealing, because you're not only dealing with all the different states within the United States, but you're also having to deal with this in the UK, which is probably different to Spain and Australia, etc. So what's that like for you as a head of Lift Brands?
Yeah, look, the first piece is the franchisee piece before we think about our consumer. I mean, the consumer is in certain regions somewhat accustomed now to the requirements. We've all accepted this COVID situation that we're in. And so, that comes with requirements that we all have to abide by. The real key more than anything else has been managing our franchisee expectations and managing, I suppose, their emotions to a degree. And that's come through listening, really clear communication and advice around what they can and can't do. Deciphering, I suppose, the information that's coming through, because at times it's been very ambiguous around, exactly how to apply the requirements that each region, state is requiring at different times. And things, as we said, they've changed almost overnight. We're facing a situation currently in Auckland, New Zealand, where New Zealand's been the epitome of the world at the moment with their response to COVID. They've had 0 cases for the last 9 odd weeks, but literally, 48 hours ago, 4 cases popped up in Auckland, unknown as to where they've come from. And within 24 hours, within 12 hours, actually, we had to close all of our Auckland stores. So we've currently got all of our Auckland stores closed, which literally came out of nowhere. So, it's been very, very agile in our response. And just, I guess, deciphering that message, giving it to our franchisees in a very clear, concise manner so that they can implement it and make sure that they're abiding to the rules. Outside of that, I think, everyone has been reasonably accepting of the situation. Well, obviously, we've also pivoted in terms of our offering. Fortunately, across the Lift Brands offering, we have, we're in 3 unique spaces. We're in, 24/7 convenience with our Snap Fitness model. We're in the boutique training space with our 9 Round brand, and we operate the 9 Round brand internationally. And then we've got our virtual training space in Fitness on Demand, and they've all been impacted differently. What we have been able to do with our other brands has been able to pivot and utilize Fitness on Demand within our facilities. So that has allowed us to really come to the forefront with a great virtual offering for all of our franchisees to support our members at home with their training during these situations. So we were able to do that really quite rapidly. And that business has seen really strong growth over the last couple of months as we've been able to offer more and more to our partners and clients in that space. So it's been interesting to see. On one hand, we closed 2,500 odd stores, and then on the other hand, we've got a business that's doing well because it's in that virtual space. So it's been very interesting for us.
And how are you looking at what's happening at the moment? I suppose trying to make long-term strategic plans. As you said, you've got 9 Round, which is very much a boutique model, which my guess relies on a certain amount of people being in that space for these to make sense financially. Are you kind of looking at what's going on at the moment as saying, like, this is a short-term bridge we've got to overcome, but the plans and the brands and the models are still as they are? Or are you sort of saying, look, we've got to rethink some of these, I suppose, outside the Fitness on Demand and kind of think about how they're going to be, how we can make them relevant to maybe what's going to continue for some time now?
Yeah, look, I won't talk to the 9 Round brand because, we're the international masters for 9 Round, and Shannon Hudson and his wife Heather are the franchisors for the US. So, they drive that strategic piece of the business and do a tremendous job. And obviously, we consult with them on a range of things. In terms of and I'll talk to probably Snap Fitness more than anything else here. For us, it has certainly been triage, get through a period of time, but we certainly can't forego the idea of, is there an opportunity for us to pivot here, and what does it look like on the other side of COVID? So for the first time, actually, in our brand's history, being Snap Fitness, we've actually brought together a global group of our Franchise Advisory Council members from different regions, so the UK, Australia, New Zealand, to the US, as well as some master franchisor representation and our corporate employees to go through a real, I suppose, a brand strategy process of understanding, is our brand positioning the correct brand positioning right now? Does it need some tweaks? Is our product mix and offering, is our member experience correct, and our onboarding process as good as it can be? And where can we improve those items? And we've been going through that process for the last 3 weeks. We've got a couple of weeks still to go. And really the goal of that is to ensure that we are in a very strong position to see out the remainder of the year and come out of the COVID situation in I suppose, having amended the brand to suit the move forward. So look, it's not about standing still, and we may get to the end of this and there may be very few small tweaks to the brand, or we may make some very large decisions. As I said, one of the really big spaces that we're heavily focused on is our member experience. So, and when I talk about the member experience, it's that technology facilitated process of when someone first joins the facility through to really the time they end up leaving the facility, and whatever that timeline looks like. Obviously, the member experience is about retaining them for longer. It's about getting them on the right journey to achieving their results and feeling part of a strong community within our club. So, that to standardize that approach through the use of technology has been probably the main thing that's been coming from this process. So I would say, yes, absolutely, we are going to pivot and change the brand to an extent, but really the core of our brand won't be changing. I mean, what's made us successful in the past is certainly what's going to drive us forward. But like anything, we have to innovate and pivot a little bit to make sure we're staying up with trends and obviously coming out of the other side of COVID. If I talk to the Fitness on Demand product on the other side of that, obviously for us, what we have seen is, streaming content has become a lot stronger. People wanting to have a strong platform to be able to stream and deliver their own content. So that's an area where it was in our product pipeline and development schedule to do a lot more in that space, but that development schedule has now pushed forward by probably 18 months, and we've put significant investment into that. So not necessarily deviating too far from course, just potentially bringing things forward in the virtual space. Obviously, I think it's come forward leaps and bounds. It's been forced to do so, which it's exciting, and it's made us invest a little bit heavier and a little bit faster.
What do you think about the changes to the consumer? So, for example, with a lot at the moment in a lot of places, people are still not required to go into the office, as an example. So I guess more and more people working from home. And I suppose if you look at, in a lot of cases where fitness facilities are developed, you look in the main cities where people work and then they work out either before or after, you've got that big sort of density of gyms. But I suppose with people not going into those cities, things may be a little bit different. And then, then maybe they require more fitness facilities near where they live. Do you see those types of changes affecting, I suppose, opportunities or how you and your franchisees decide on where to expand based on some of those changes?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I would say as a general response, yes, we are considering that. And yes, we have already seen a change in usage patterns from our members. Certainly with the flexibility of working environments, both now and what I believe will be quite long into the future for most employers, there will be an ongoing change in that space. We are certainly seeing a much more significant spread in terms of usage throughout the day for our facilities. And so that's an interesting outcome. The other interesting outcome is that, the really strong business and commercial districts are seeing a reduction in usage of those facilities. So, it's looking at, do we go into some more regional hubs? And look, interestingly for Snap Fitness, we are fairly strong in regional hubs. We actually don't have as strong a capital city presence, especially across the United States. And, for me, that still is an opportunity for us. There's a lot of regions that we're not involved in at the moment, so we will certainly continue to look at that. And it speaks strongly to the type of investor that we're looking for as well. We are looking for not necessarily the owner or operator to be involved in our business, where previously we probably looked for larger investors that wanted to be not just multi-site owners, but probably 5, 6s, 10s, and more. These days, it's probably more about the 1, 2s, and the 3 location owners that can do it in their local region where they're part of the community. They can build good, strong relationships and ties within that area. And so I think for us and in franchising, every time we hit a challenge with the economic situation, we typically see a strong growth and I suppose opportunities within franchising. People that have, I guess, stepped out of the space they're in, either forced or voluntarily moved on from what they've been in, that have, they've got some money there for whatever reason, and they look at what's the opportunity for me to go into something that I'm passionate about, that I can control my own destiny. And franchising typically sees a strong resurgence. We're seeing some really strong interest in our franchising at the moment, in particular through APAC at the minute. We're seeing really strong interest. I think that's because there's been a little bit more consumer confidence in that region, with probably a few less cases and stores being open a bit longer. In the US, we're starting to see some good uptick, and in the UK with stores just reopened a few weeks back, we're starting to see that build as well. So it's interesting to see that. So hopefully that gives a bit of clarity on it.
Yeah. So with the franchising part of the business, like you mentioned, the importance or balancing out or having more people that are in the 1 to 2 location franchisees, and that can provide, I suppose, the hands-on approach and connection with the community. But I suppose with that, I suppose comparing the bigger organizations with the smaller ones, then I guess the lessons of running business are probably slightly different from someone who's experienced with running a lot of locations, for example. With that being said, and being in a time where for any entrepreneurs it's very difficult just mentally to understand how to play it. What sort of advice or conversations are you having with a lot of probably these sort of small to medium-sized businesses that are obviously very concerned that maybe they've got their locations shut down and they've got pressure of rent? How are you sort of holding a hand and helping them get through it? And what sort of things are you saying to them based on your experience?
Well, I think number one thing that we've certainly been saying to them is that any cash that you're sitting on, you need to sit on it as best you can. Cash preservation through this period of uncertainty, in particular whilst they're still closed, is the number one priority. They absolutely must have cash coming out the other side. The second piece has been really focusing on any area of support that they may be able to get in short term. So whether that be SBA loans, whether that be landlord abatements or deferrals, any of those items, any government assistance. Every region has been different, and that's been part of our challenge as well, has been really digging in to understand what are some of those support mechanisms and how do we then give that to our franchisees to make it easy for them to access. So that's certainly been a space where we've put a lot of attention to, I guess, support our franchisees, hold their hand a little bit, but make it a little bit easier for them, because right at this very moment, they're juggling all sorts of things. They're juggling the stress of, whatever they've got going on at home, their mortgages and other, car repayments. The kids are at home doing, home learning. There's a whole range of things. So, I mean, the strength of being part of a franchise is that you have us to do that work for you. One of the things that we took a really strong stance on from day one is that as a franchisor, we retained all of our staff globally. Now, that was a huge thing to do. It obviously has been a significant expense for us, especially when we also made the decision from day one to not charge our franchisees one penny as we closed our stores. So we ceased all billing. We abated most items. We deferred a couple of little things that we couldn't not pay on behalf of the franchisees, insurance and things like that. But largely we ensured that our franchisees had no expenses from us and they had all the support that we would continue giving them regardless. So we wanted to ensure that we had those team members to do that. That was a huge decision from us. It has really boded well to come out of the other side of that with a staff now that are really, I guess, confident with the fact that we're there to support them, but that also flows down into our franchisees as well. So I think it's not as much about what we're saying to them, but it's been a lot around our actions of what we've done as an organisation with our franchisees to show that level of support.
And I know you've been on both sides of the fence. You've worked for big companies, but you've also run your own businesses and been in the trenches. What are some of the things that people, business owners, do you think are struggling with the most at the moment? And that's a very broad question. Now, it can be everything from the demons inside their head to dealing with customers or banks. What do you think the things that people need the most help with at the moment? And what do you think? What do you think people should do about it?
I think there is something that I can give you to do about it. I think what our franchisees are dealing with is what we're all dealing with, and it's the uncertainty of what the future holds, probably more over the short term than the long term. I think this all began sort of back in March. We're a fair way down the track now in August, and I mean we're still not out of the woods right now. We don't know what this looks like. In North America, we're going into winter, and what does that bring? In our southern regions of Australia and so on, they are, coming out of winter and going into summer. Does that improve the situation further? So the uncertainty, I think, is a real challenge for people, just where this thing lands. How long does it go on for? Do we have re-lockdowns? All of those things. And that's causing, certainly a significant amount of anxiety for everybody, I think, globally. I don't think there's many people on the planet that haven't had a moment of a bit of anxiousness around what the future holds. I think the health and fitness industry, whilst and this is where probably part of the challenge and the frustration has been for most industry leaders, is that we know for a fact that mental health and well-being is so significantly impacted by working on your health and fitness. Exercising is probably one of the major drivers of so many benefits, health and wellness wise and mental health wise. So for us to see, pubs, for example, in the UK being given the opportunity to open prior to gyms, knowing that gyms are by far a much safer place to be and a much more sanitized place to be, and not to mention the fact that we have contract tracing and tracking availability because we are a membership base, not open to the general public, really is a huge frustration. And I think from a priority perspective, many governments around the world got that one wrong, and I think that's something that hopefully as an industry we can start to change a little bit of that perception. And so for me the answer is really that the unknown is the challenge. I suppose the solution is for people to get out and about and do other things. Get out and exercise when they can. Whether it be joining the gym, getting out and enjoying the outdoors, going for a walk with the family, picking up an exercise that you've never done, doing some mind-body work. All of those things are really integral to getting through the challenge and trying to keep a positive outlook on the future. So that would be my bit of advice.
Is it important for you now as a leader to be able to, I suppose, provide that level of assurance and confidence? Because I guess you can either look at things depending on what you read on the news. You can either say it's pretty bad, it's pretty awful, and you could be affected by some of that stuff, or you could just be fairly, I suppose, level and confident and positive. And what is the right approach, and what is one that you sort of follow from that respect?
Yeah, look, personally, at times, we've all had frustration, and there's probably been a little bit of anger there at one time or another. For me personally, to manage and deal with it, and because it's not just mine, right? I carry the burden of a significant number of people's financial futures, and I don't carry that lightly. I carry that with a lot of empathy, a lot of respect, and so that takes time. I meditate every morning, and I do that for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I don't do a structured meditation; it's just some time out, and then I go and exercise every morning, and I try and do that without fail. And I think that really sets the position for me for the day and to fight the day ahead. Because if I'm not in the right mindset, then I can't deliver strongly for the team that are out there supporting our franchisees. So for me, that's a real key piece. Look, fortunately, exercise and that mind-body piece for me has been a part of my life for a long time prior to COVID. So it had already been part of that routine. But I would really suggest for people to find some peace in doing some mind-body items and getting their mental state right when they start the day. And certainly, exercise doesn't need to be an hour in the gym every morning. Exercise can be the 10-minute walk around the block just to clear your head and start the day fresh. So just finding that little bit of routine to kickstart your day is a really important one. That's probably the biggest piece that I would give advice around, and that's how I do it myself.
I know I've sort of heard you reference sort of Peter Taunton before, and I guess you've been around many sort of successful entrepreneurs. Do you think that the mental health, and I'm talking really to like your franchisees and small independent business owners, but do you think the mental health or part of it is a big part of running a successful business or being a successful entrepreneur?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, if I think about, there's a study that's occurred over in Dunedin, New Zealand. It's one of the longest running longitudinal studies that's ever occurred. I think that it's been running for 45 or nearly 50 years. And one of the items that they tested was, is there a specific determiner of success? And it was interesting that emotional stability and emotional intelligence were two of the real keys to that. And so I think being able to balance those emotions through the use of some of these key techniques is a real key to success. I think in any entrepreneur, we all have our moments, right? Don't get me wrong. I have my moments, as Peter has had his moments, and anyone else has. But I think that balance is a real key and critical component, and knowing how to understanding the triggers within oneself that drive some of those emotional reactions is important. And I think that's probably one of the big keys. And actually, interestingly, that came out in that longitudinal study as being one of the major determining factors of success.
And it's funny because I suppose with what's, I suppose at the moment it's going to put a lot of pressure on even the best leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, because there's a lot going on. And I suppose we work hard, or we're working harder. We've got a lot of pressure. We've got family, financial. There's a lot going on. And I suppose when you look at my experience, and it seems as though yours is very similar, having that time in the day where you're sort of just getting your head in check, you're working out, you're putting your body in the best position. You're obviously well prepared to take on any opponent that comes your way, as opposed to if you're not in that state. And yet, I guess if you look at the way some of the local governments are dealing with supporting gyms and that sort of stuff compared to other businesses, as you mentioned, pubs. I've worked in that industry when I was younger, and I think we all know what happens after a few drinks, and we also know what it's like in a gym, and they're two very, very different situations. And certainly the fitness facilities I've been in have been extremely strict in controlling exactly what's happening, and your distancing and the cleanliness and everything like that. What do you think, if you look at California, which is where I am at the moment, what do you think that the gyms are being given a hard time in terms of being able to open, based on the benefits that it would have if people were just generally healthier and being supported on that area?
It's a super hard question to answer with any clarity without getting political, right? Look, it is a challenging one, and I would like to give a clear, concise answer to it, and I don't think I can give one right at the moment. What I would say to it though is, I hope as an industry, and this is the first time I've really ever seen the industry band together. We have linked arms with most of who we would call our competitors. I've actually spoken to a couple of our major competitors out there in the marketplace on a number of occasions, and we're actually co-investing in educating the general public and our governments in a lobbying process around the benefits of health and fitness. And so I think there's just, for some reason, a lack of understanding there. And look, it's always a balance of opportunity cost, right? What's the opportunity we're missing out on, and what's the cost related to what we're doing at the minute? And I have no doubt that every government in each region has done some significant analysis around what that looks like. But for some reason, the gym industry has just, in almost every region we've seen, hasn't really been consulted around the numbers and the real statistics. I mean, you've only got to have a look at the numbers of people that have, I suppose, contracted or been connected to the virus within a gym versus within a pub in the UK, and it's significantly different. Far outweighed by the numbers that have been found in relation to pub transmission. So, I'm not sure that there's been any quantifiable research that's been done that makes sense in that space, which is really the frustrating piece. So I think the lack of clarity as to how they're making these decisions is what's been really driving a lot of the frustration for our franchisees. Look, I have to say, hats off to a couple of our franchisees, though. We've got one franchisee over there in California who literally opened a new facility about 2 weeks before COVID locked him down. He's gone and hired, fortunately for him, he had a great landlord and a big outdoor car park space, which he's gone and hired some huge marquees and is still running his facility from under the marquees outdoors. I mean, this is just how crazy it is, right? Because in California, you're allowed to run outdoor training within an outdoor gym, even though the situation is not that far removed. Yeah, okay, you bring it indoors slightly different, and probably the air circulates a little bit more insular, but I mean the sanitation processes that we're going through are significant and very high. And, even our participants and our members have now been educated around how to ensure that they're safe within our facilities. So it is a bit frustrating from that perspective.
Do you think, you mentioned that the industry's come together, and I've been on a number of different panels recently, and it seems that, certainly in the US, I've seen a few groups. There's a group in California, there's another one in Chicago, where they're trying to sort of pull together, I suppose, the gyms that are doing things right, because from what seems to be happening is you've got the people who do things well and properly, and the people who just don't really care, and it's like, look, we won't enforce masks if that's required. And then it seems as though some of these local governments or people who are running the various states sort of see that, and they're like, look, we need to close everything down. Do you think there's an argument of trying to sort of get the people together that are doing things right and saying, okay, well, look, you're either going to be one of these sort of gold star facilities where we do everything right and you're safe, or you're not, and to separate the good from the bad, as opposed to kind of putting everybody in the same group? I don't know if you've seen anything similar at all.
Yeah, to an extent, probably the place where I've seen the best driver in that has probably been in Australia, and led by our industry body there, Fitness Australia. They've taken a really active lead in terms of working with government to set some industry standards around what should and shouldn't be done. And so I think that leadership from industry body has been really strong across Australia and probably across New Zealand as well. Look, I know IHRSA here in the US have been doing a significant amount of work, and I think the challenge here in the US more than anything else is that you're dealing with so many individual states and state governors. So, everyone has had their own thoughts. So it's probably been very hard for them to, create any major thought or collaborative piece to that. So we have seen it a little bit, but I think it's been dictated around region. That's probably as best an answer I can give to you at the moment. Outside of that, it's I haven't seen a huge amount. Really, that's why we have been to an extent forced to link arms with our competitors and what I would call now our partners in trying to I suppose save the industry to an extent. I mean, most of us are all going to come out the other side of this, but we have seen some bankruptcies already, right? We saw Golds go through some challenge and 24-Hour Fitness go through some challenge, and we ourselves, we haven't been immune to it. We've closed not an insignificant number of stores across the globe over the last few months, and certainly more than what we would normally have closed due to this situation of people that, for whatever circumstance, whether it be personal or business related, have had to walk away, which is never a nice thing. So
no. And what do you think about the numbers of people that are now, or certainly in the medium term, going to be interested in working out in a fitness facility? There's obviously a lot of health drivers now that people weren't aware of. I see, again, I don't like to take too much about what I read in the news too seriously, but in general, it seems as though there's an awareness that, look, if you're fit and strong and healthy and your weight's right, you're going to be able to deal with a lot of things better. But then on the flip side, there's a lot of people who are just concerned to even leave the house, let alone going into a place where they're with people. So do you think there's going to be a demand for, I suppose, people to go for a facility to work out at least the same or maybe more? Or do you think they're going to be looking at other businesses like your Fitness on Demand, for example, and saying, well, can we do this without having to visit a fitness facility?
For sure. Yeah, great question. And look, I have no doubt some of the virtual competitors out there in this space that are business to customer have been doing extremely well. We all know of Peloton and their growth, and I haven't looked at their numbers over the last couple of months, but I have no doubt they've been significant. Look, absolutely, there's been a significant and short-term huge spike in terms of virtual training options and people wanting to probably steer clear of the gym for a period of time. Interestingly, from day one when we opened, we actually saw significant growth in our stores. Not only new members coming on board, but our swipe access and visitation was significantly up. And that's year on year as well. It's, same time month from previous year. So, that confidence certainly was interesting to see. That being said, interestingly, I think it is part around age demographic as well. If I talk to our model here in the US for Snap Fitness in particular, our demographic is a little bit older than some of our other regions, so APAC and EMEA. And, it's interesting to see that we didn't quite have as strong a swipe or access data coming through, and not quite as many new joiners come through across the US and Canada as we did in our other regions. And I think that's just being driven by the age and demographic of our member. And so I think, the younger groups, certainly sub 40s, sub 50s, even to an extent, have been pretty confident in coming back to the gym. I guess, the plus 60s and certainly maybe a little bit younger that are just a bit more concerned have probably been staying away that little bit longer. And so, for us, it's still, the real key for us is to be able to facilitate both. I think we're getting to a point, I did some club visits today, for example, and was having a conversation with one of our franchisees, and he said, he's got some members that are a little bit older, and they'll pull up in the car park, and if they see more than 3 or 4 cars there, they'll turn around and they'll come back a bit later on. I mean, they've got that flexibility of probably coming at a time that suits them, so they can do that. So there's definitely that little bit of lack of consumer confidence there just at the moment. But that will build. And in the short term, we're ensuring that we're supporting that from a perspective of online, virtual, and at home. So, as I said, we pivoted with a product that we've called Stay Fit, which is supported by our FOD platform. It's specific for the Snap Fitness brand. It's specific Snap Fitness content that our members can access from home anytime via their email and their membership number. So that's been really beneficial. We saw a significant spike, and we've seen a continued usage of that. It's obviously petering off as people are starting to get back to the gym, but that's been super beneficial for us to have both of those platforms. And I see that continuing forward, people probably supplementing their face-to-face, in-person, in-gym sort of experiences with some more of these at-home and virtual options.
I know when this came out, everybody was very quick to be doing Instagram lives and Facebook lives and all that kind of stuff. I guess you guys, and I've known quite a bit about Fitness on Demand, but you guys have been in this digital space for quite a long time. In fact, you're probably one of the earlier adopters of this. What would you say are some of the things that have changed in that space due to COVID? Has people's sort of usage of it changed and then leveled off just because they thought they can't come in the gym? I think other things that you're seeing wanting to do at home may be different than what they were before. Is there any sort of interesting changes from, I guess, all that experience that you've had previously to what's happening now in digital?
Yeah, look, one of the things, I mean, whilst we have a significant amount of content within the Fitness on Demand platform, we obviously do in-store virtual option with Fitness on Demand, but we've also pivoted to our Fitness on Demand Flex product, which is, that we launched that this year, and it's seen really strong growth, and it's seen strong growth in a range of verticals, not just in the gym environment, but the multi-use housing environment and a couple of others. And that's been interesting to see. And so, it's that value add piece for a range of businesses that they can offer something else to their member base. And so that's been a space that we've really heavily invested in the short term. The other piece that obviously, you mentioned it just a minute ago, is that live streaming piece. And, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, they're reasonable platforms, but they're limited. So, for us, that's an area that we're investing in heavily to ensure that we're the best content platform, not just content provider, but platform. And being a good, strong platform for our facilities. And because we are predominantly business to business in our relationships, it's about ensuring that, our partners and our clients, they're their personal trainers and their instructors can access a really strong platform that the gym can keep things a bit more controlled rather than their trainers going off and utilizing their own platforms and different things. So quite a bit of investment has gone into that space as well in the short term, and there'll be quite a few releases coming from us in terms of that, I suppose, upgrade to our platform. You know, as I said, it was all in our pipeline for sort of over the next 18 months. We had a range of updates to come, which we've pushed pretty significantly and pretty fast on.
So how do you work? How does the Fitness on Demand, or does it work with your? So if I've got a Snap franchise, do I have the benefits of that? And are you changing the way that you're working with any of your partners now because you've got this unique digital solution that a lot of people don't have?
Yeah, for a lot of our customers out there, it's a real value add for their members. You know, so where we started was in the unique virtual experience within the four walls of the gym. So if you had a studio that we could bring to life virtually, it was a great, number one, sales tool, but number two, real add-on value for members, you know. So in particular for the convenience space where, you know, low staff models where you could facilitate group fitness within your store. So that's really where Fitness on Demand became or found its feet. You know, from there, that has kind of merged and grown and moved in a slightly different direction. And in particular, over the last 6 months with COVID, it's really moved into that space of facilitating at-home training and offering something additional outside of the four walls of the gym. So for us, that's been the biggest conversation with our clients and partners in that space, has been, how do we bring this to life for you outside of the four walls of your gym to help you retain clients longer, to be able to allow them to supplement their in-store workouts with external and outdoor workouts, for example. So I guess at least that member then has the link to their facility facilitated by the Fitness on Demand Flex opportunity, which they can then be doing, you know, a yoga class in the park, or you know, a workout in their bedroom, or whatever it might be, when they either can't get to the gym, they don't feel comfortable getting to the gym, you know, they might be traveling the world or whatever it might be. So the great thing about the Fitness on Demand Flex product is that it's, you know, it's branded to the local facility. It looks and feels like the local facility's product. So from that perspective, it's a really strong tool for gyms that we work with across the globe.
So as a product then, so if I've got Snap Fitness Scottsdale, Matthew Januzek, so would I then be able to offer all my members access to this Flex as part of the, if they weren't coming into the gym, or if I was closed, you'd be offering them all those different programs, would you?
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is. So, you know, we have access to, you know, a lot of bespoke content from a range of providers. We have, you know, all of your Les Mills content in there, and everything in between. So there's a lot of different variety in there. We can create something that's a bit bespoke for the individual location if they want to offer certain items. But yeah, it really depends on the partner and what they're looking to achieve with their member base.
And are you doing anything where you've kind of got memberships that you separate, like so digital only memberships or a hybrid? How do you structure that and charge for it? Or at the moment, is it just like if you're a member, you're gonna get all that great stuff for free?
Yeah, look, I think for most, they've gone down the line of thinking about retention more than anything else. Over the last few months, it's certainly been about retaining your members to come out of the other side of when you do reopen your store and start completely rebilling your members, that you can obviously retain them and be in the best possible position. So for a lot, it's they've been quite happy to offer it for free for their members, and obviously that becomes another expense. For others, they do charge for it, and it's an upgrade to the base membership, and you do need to upgrade to get access to that. It really just depends. I mean, we have a number of different ways that you can integrate it within your business, and whether that be more from a retention tool perspective or from a secondary spend and increase in revenue perspective. So it really just depends on the facility and how they feel and why they're thinking about utilizing the product.
How do you think people's habits will change? Like, I know for me, certainly, I've started to get used to, I've had to kit out my home gym, and so I've got a pretty decent setup. And so I suppose if depending on how my week's structured and my time, I've sort of got used to doing a bit more at home than probably what I would have done previously. I still like that. I still miss that gym part, but I probably won't go there as many times as what I did. Do you think that's going to be a problem as with these digital solutions, people start to become more self-sufficient of doing other things, and that could eventually wean them off, so that or push them down the direction of people like the Pelotons and that? Or do you think it's all good as long as they're connected to your brand?
Yeah, someone asked me the other day about the comparison to sort of Blockbuster and Netflix, right? Is it kind of going in that direction? And I think they're two very different examples. Where the real key is with the bricks and mortar piece is around the community. And at the end of the day, we're social beings. People want human interaction, and so for us, I think the real danger has been, more around the fact of ensuring that we pivot what Snap Fitness is in particular. And I'll use Snap as the example, from being, what was fast, affordable, convenient, and really convenience. I guess in the public's eye, lots of locations, but probably low support model, and, just a convenient price point. For us, it's been about pivoting to become, how do we be a stronger partner with our members to ensure that we're driving results with and for our members, and building a strong community. And that community is built both by, I suppose, technology, which we're working significantly on, as I mentioned, from that member experience piece, but also community within the four walls, and ensuring that we've got the right level of staffing and personal trainers and programming and everything else. So for me, I'm a very strong believer, and everything's sort of pointing to the fact that is going to be a strong component moving forward. The penetration rate of people exercising across the globe is only increasing. In the US, it's significant. We're over 20% penetration rate in terms of gym memberships and regular exercise. If you look at the APAC region, we've got countries there that are at 0.2, 0.3% of the population, and even less. But as the rising middle class increases in those areas, I think we've got huge opportunities across the board with our bricks and mortar facilities, provided that we adopt and embrace virtual. We can't just sit on our hands and think that you're just going to have four walls and build it and people are going to come. That's not going to be the case. We need to be able to offer these other items to supplement the bricks and mortar piece. So I think it's the right combination and balance of both.
What are your thoughts about this one then? Because you've obviously got the product itself, but then you've got the marketing and you use the word community. I guess it's not easy, but at most fitness bricks and mortar businesses have had to get good at creating community within the facilities. Although some have managed to get away with not doing that, but the good ones, they understand how to do that. If you look at a lot of the digital only products, so let's say some of the trainers that have got apps, so the Kayla app, for example, one of the things that a lot of these guys and girls are doing is they're doing an awesome job at creating virtual communities by using social media. They're following their interaction with the following, the communication outside of the gym, and that ongoing support, which traditional bricks and mortar gyms have never had to do and have not been particularly that great. And I suppose now what you've got is you've got the online and the offline, and now they're kind of almost sort of meeting. There's this connection in between. Do you think that businesses like yourselves and that have got to, when they go forward, have got to kind of rethink their marketing and that virtual community side of the business? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a really great question, Matthew. It's let me start with the why. I think, or probably the why that's occurring and why we're seeing the Kayla scenes and so on become so popular. The interesting fact there is that, I don't know the exact numbers, but I've heard a few stats here and there around the number of people that are connected with those items that are still going to a gym on a regular basis, right? But their facility just hasn't been able to bridge the gap between bricks and mortar and building that online community with people. And so, look, there's always going to be that strong influencer piece. I think what you're going to see is facilities, in particular the larger franchises that have got the resourcing and understand the importance to have a strong online community. And so for the first time ever, we're really talking about, well, how do we actually build a global community? And how do we interact with, our stores in the US versus Australia and the UK, and how do we have them connecting with one another? So a lot of work is going into that from our perspective, and I have no doubt a number of our competitors are doing the same. I think you'll also see a number of the smaller facilities out there getting access to different ways of building their community via third-party apps and white-labeled apps and things like that, where they can connect into other communities. So I think you're going to see that technology and online community piece change quite significantly. It's not just going to be driven by the major influencers that you see via Instagram and so on. That being said, I have no doubt that some of the bigger brands are probably going to partner with some of those types of celebrities and people that are already out there with strong followings and influence bases, or they may partner with new people and build that themselves. So I think that strategy in the marketing space and building that not only bricks and mortar community within your four walls, but external, is a really big part of retaining your members for a longer period of time. So you will see some significant investment going into that. And I think you'll see some quite interesting ways of doing things moving forward.
And I think you're right, like the point you mentioned earlier about in terms of looking for some of these smaller operators that are connected with their community. I suppose having that same approach, but using other platforms, as you said, you can still create that virtual connection and commenting on what people are doing. But I suppose it's almost now probably more important that businesses are thinking about how to do it if they're not getting the regular check-in, aren't they? I suppose,
Look, absolutely. I mean, and I'm sure you've got a good understanding of how much it is to build these sort of platforms, right? And do it yourself. So, for a large organization like ourselves, yes, look, we've got the resourcing and the ability to do it, but for the individual owner operator out there, it's a challenge. And so, that's some of the things that are in our development pipeline for FOD, to be able to support some of that functionality as well for our clients. So, for a couple of $100 a month, you get access to not only a great content platform, a virtual platform, but also a space to build your local community as well.
So, couple of questions. Well, couple of questions before we end, but before that, I'd just be interested to hear a bit about you in terms of what you're offering to new potential business owners from a Lift Brands perspective. What is it? I suppose. What is it that that you guys are going to be doing, I suppose, now and in future that would make getting involved with you guys a good investment?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think innovation is the big piece. The fitness space moves with trend, and it moves pretty rapidly. So it's driven by the young demographics, the Gen Ys, the Gen Zs, and if we're not up to date with those trends and innovating rapidly, then we get left behind. And Snap Fitness has been a super successful model, but we have to innovate it. And hence why at the moment we're going through a global strategy process, which I mentioned earlier, and it's the first time we've really gone through this process at such a significant level and really taking on a huge amount of feedback to ensure that we get it right. So I think a big difference for us is that we really listen to our franchisees and that you're a partner with us from day one. So that's probably a big piece there. We have the great thing about Lift Brands is that you've got a variety of options in terms of investment. In particular, if we talk about the Snap Fitness model, it can be an owner-operator model. It can be a connected owner model, or it can be an investor type model. It certainly has been successful for larger groups, and we're not shying away from the fact that we are still out there looking for some larger groups and what I would call regional or area developers that are in a certain location or region that really want to make a go of it and have a great opportunity, whether that be a master franchisor for a country region, and we have a number of countries available at that higher level, or individual owner operator at just a single store level. Whatever that ambition is, we can certainly tick the box from that perspective. And the success of the model has certainly proven that across all of those levels. The 9-round model is a little bit different again, right? It's probably geared more towards the owner operator and someone that's going to be quite connected to the business. And so, a slightly lower level of investment required. Someone that's got some good fitness experience, someone that wants to be hands-on within the business. That's the sort of person that we're looking for within the 9-round brand. And if you love that functional training, kickboxing style of training, that's definitely the piece to be looking at. So I think more than anything else, we've a lot of years of franchising, a significant support structure, regional offices in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, and the US, and looking at Singapore in the next sort of 6 or so months. So we've got really good global presence and support.
Mm. And from an individual perspective, Ty, what are you? I know you're clearly an ambitious guy, and you've done very well to get where you are. But what are you hoping to, I suppose, leave as a legacy with your role within Lift Brands?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I've been in franchising for a long time. I was fortunate to save some pennies and purchase my first franchise just on my 21st birthday, really. And that was a model called EFM Health Clubs in Australia, and they're about 65 odd clubs. Similar sort of model to an F45 in terms of how they operate, probably a bit before their time. Great little model. I was able to go from 1 to 2 to 3 locations, and then I stepped into 24/7 clubs and purchased a couple of 24/7 facilities. So, I've been in franchising for a very long time, both on the franchisee side and now the franchisor side. So I've experienced a lot of things. For me, the real driver and purpose of why I do this is really about creating happier and healthier lifestyles for our franchisees. And so the legacy that I want to leave is really being able to put more smiles on people's faces and being able to help a franchisee create the lifestyle they want out of the business that they love. And I know that sounds a little bit gimmicky to a degree, but that's really been the driver of why I've been sitting in this seat forever. I started in the industry as a personal trainer many years ago, and it was really about creating happier and healthier lifestyles for my clients at that time. So for me now to take that and transition it a little bit differently with our franchisees. Now, look, there's a whole range of things that I could throw at you from a stats perspective and the number of stores I'd like to get to and all those sort of things. But the reality is the real key driver and what I'm imparting on our team is it's really about our franchisees and them having the lifestyle that they want out of the business that they have. And if we can achieve that with certainly the majority of our franchisees, I would love to say every single franchisee. I'm a realist. That's not going to be the case. But certainly the majority of our franchisees and the significant majority of our franchisees, then that's really the piece that I leave as my legacy more than anything else.
Real broad question, but 12 months from now, what is the traditional fitness industry going to look like, would you say, from your perspective?
Well, I think I've probably given a lot of hints as to what it looks like. Look, virtual is not going away. People working out from home is not going away. I think you're going to see some significant competitors come into that space to give the likes of Peloton, Mirror, and so on a run for their money in that business consumer piece. So that will only evolve further and further, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I certainly think those online programs facilitated by some of our key influencers, again, is only going to increase. The bricks and mortar facilities, are here to stay. And I think what you're going to see is a transition from the old standard lack of service, lack of community, just convenience type gyms really convert through to a much more community and results driven type business. And probably I would say more likened to a boutique facility than what you've ever seen before. So you're going to see more and more options in that space become, I think you'll see the boutique space become more affordable because of the pivoting of some of these other facilities that have been more just in the convenience space. Look, where I see, and I really want to watch, and I think which will be interesting is that low cost space. Your Planet Fitness and your Crunch Fitness, all those sort of guys in that space. Look, I think there's longevity to that space, but I think it's a highly competitive one and one that is a challenge to be in. So it'll be interesting to watch that space as well.
Fantastic. And final question then, Ty. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you believed was impossible and gone on to make it possible. What would be a memorable example of where you've escaped your own personal limits?
Taking over a business this size from my kitchen table in the middle of COVID is probably a fair one, mate. And on the other side of the world, I should say. Look, that was a challenge, and it is still a challenge, right? It's been a tremendous challenge. It's been certainly very rewarding. I think the big challenge for us is that we are in that pivoting space where we do have, so I know you've asked me for something where I've escaped it previously, but I'm going to talk to a little bit about how we're going to escape it as an organization. And we're in a space where we have slight differences across each region. We have to pivot a few things at the moment within our organization. We're doing a lot of work on that. The only way to do that is to listen to our organization. Within an organization this large, we have some tremendous ideas, thoughts, experience, knowledge. And when we harness that and we come together as an organization, as we are doing at the moment with our global strategy group, to really pave a solid way forward, that's really where we escape our limits and create something where, it's not just going to come from corporate. It's going to come from the organization. It's going to be driven by the organization and well adopted by the franchisee group. And that's really where our strength is going to come from moving forward.
Fantastic. Well, Ty, thank you so much for making the time and sharing a bit about your journey at the moment. I wish you guys a lot of success. It sounds like you're very well positioned to ride the storm, and I wish you and your team a great deal of success in the future. So thank you very much for your time today.
Matthew, it's been a pleasure, mate. I hope whatever words I've shared, I can impart a little bit of support or knowledge out to your listeners. And mate, it's been tremendous. I've really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.